session. Now I would like to invite Professor Arul, who needs no introduction. Professor Arul is Professor Emeritus of Obstetrics at St. George's University of London, and he's also an honorary professor at Imperial College London. I invite Professor Arul to speak a few words. Welcome, sir.
Right, Pallavi. Thank you, Sudhin and Pallavi. I'm going to share my slides just because Sudhin wanted me to give an overview, so I'll just see whether I can. It'll just take about 5 or 10 minutes. He wanted me to map the progress so far on the PREVENT study, and the findings so far has been given to me by Sudhin, so I'm going to summarize. But it's quite important for us to really recap. I think Sudhin might have mentioned before I came why we are doing the study, that is to prevent encephalopathy and epilepsy on the long run. He might have also given the view that there is 50 to 70 million people with epilepsy, but in India itself, there's a large number. I think what is important about the large number in India is we have to remember there are 27 million births each year in India. So you can have, if you calculate in proportion, the numbers expected are correct. That is, with the given incidence of HIE or neonatal encephalopathy, you might get that. So the total cost, economic burden is also there in addition to personal burden of the individual and the family. So that also has to be kept in mind. And if we go into intrapartum causes, that is what we are trying to prevent. And we know that oxytocin is a key factor. And one of the things we are trying to do in this study is actually introducing the ePartogram so that the oxytocin is not started early unless they are in the active phase, then they might go on their own. Second is to do an oxytocin infusion pump. And already there have been review done to say the oxytocin associated problem. The second thing we are doing is actually intrapartum monitoring is lacking, and that is also addressed by using a graphic Doppler, which might be easier to manage in large facilities. So these two are elements, and Tina has already mentioned about the companion at birth, which is essential to reduce the operating delivery as well as to increase the chance of the baby being born in good condition. So these three, companion at birth, use of ePartogram, using the WHO labor guide, and starting oxytocin later and using a pump is quite important. And finally, the neonatal care, which is quite important. Now, the PREVENT progress, overview of the progress, they met in January 2020. Study started in March. The first wave of COVID pandemic delayed it for 6 months. Then there was staggered start, Calicut in 2020 July, Bangalore in August 2020, Hubli in September 2020. And the second wave of COVID has suspended the study for months in 2021. Now the third wave has started, and the implementation phase of the intervention has been delayed to March 2022. Now, despite these life and health threatening challenges to our researchers and the staff and healthcare personnel, the study has progressed quite well. And although the target was 30,000, they have collected 43,000. Now, of course, we have to keep this in mind that the intrapartum care bundle is applicable to those who are in labor. So if you have out of the 43,000, if you have elective sections of 13,000, then those who are applicable to the intrapartum care bundle will be 30,000. So we have enough and more for us to study as far as the baseline data or the early phase is concerned. The milestones had to be adjusted because of these changes, and Sudhin and the team has written to NIHR, and they will get the necessary permission. And gradual implementation of the care bundle started in October 2021 and will be hopefully implemented fully in March 2022. And already 700 babies with brain injury have been recruited, and there's near 100% follow-up. Now, in addition, there's been teaching and training going on. So the weekly teaching by Dr. Ronit Presier. Then there are several PREVENT study team members have been successful in obtaining additional fellowships. 7 have been registered for PhD and 2 at Imperial College. Quarterly external evaluation of the PREVENT study is being conducted by a separate team from New Delhi. This is quite an important process because in any implementation research, if the implementation is to be successful, then we must start a process of audit of the structure, process, and outcome. So this team is going to audit the structure and process because the outcome will be by the program implementation team looking at the outcome, what is happening. But whether the materials is there is enough videos, study material, public education material, oxytocin pumps, all that will be studied, as well as whether they are doing it, like the companion is there or not, and so forth. So this is a very important component of quality assurance which is going on. And it's a very impressive team. And this symposium will give an update, as you heard already, Tina, but we'll listen to the others as well. And there are a few unexpected findings from the first year of the study. As suspected, the incidence of HIE is 5 to 10 times higher, but the vast majority of HIE did not have sentinel events like abruption, cord collapse, etc., which is a good news in the sense that there are more cases coming through because of HIE. It's good news for the research, but bad news for the children who are coming through HIE, which means we can prevent them. So by this research, if we can show we can prevent and also bring down cesarean section rate, that'll be good. So only around 4% of HIE associated with sentinel events, so which is quite important for us to remember that we are not doing this research in vain, but this gives us hope that by implementing the care bundle, we might be able to reduce HIE and thus prevent later major consequences like epilepsy. So the overall, so it's not only to find out the answer, we can reduce HIE and epilepsy, but it is also going to augment other things, like augmenting research to examine the pragmatic care bundle so that we can inform other low and middle income countries how we can improve the outcome, capacity building to enhance the local research academic capacity, institutional reputation and patient experiences can be improved, especially with companion at birth, and institutional reputation by giving the best care possible. So there's increased patient satisfaction. So research progress I have mentioned, but the numbers are broken down at the end of this table. Calicut has given 11,000, Bangalore 16,000, and Karnataka 11,000. So there is a good recruitment from all three centers. Because sometimes when you look at the total number, some centers don't contribute so much. Here, all three centers are doing extremely well in recruitment, and we are grateful to all the three centers and the researchers. Research staff, this is the total number of staff. As you could see, there's an impressive team. So I like to applaud Sudin and his team to manage all this show with the 62 research nurses, and including 34 trained in intrapartum fetal monitoring, project managers, senior biostatistician, EEG technicians, etc. So this is not a simple task. It's a mammoth task, and we all have to contribute whatever we can to make this research a success. These are the PhD. I won't go through in the detail. These are the name: Vaikash Krishnan, Pallavi Muralidharan, Yashika, Vijay Kumar, Jyoti Ramachandran, Sisira, and Deepika. They are looking at different angles of the research, all coming out of this particular project. So this is very impressive because one is looking at health economic aspect, another one is looking at lowering cesarean section. So it is looking at gene expression. So this is a multi-talented team. So we are most grateful for the research and also for the researchers for their input. There have been several grants awarded, and that is again acknowledged because it's quite important that the research is not only to write papers and PhD, but also to increase the capacity for them to obtain grants and also short-term fellowships. There have been neonatal EEG clinical research fellowship and intrapartum fetal fellowship. So this research is fulfilling many things. It's an implementation research to change practice, but also enhancing the research capacity, increasing education and training, and also making young researchers come up so that they can continue with research, not only in this field, but in others. There's been regular training sessions, which also training the trainers type of thing. So Tina and the team are looking at the dignity games, and this is quite important. And there are EEG meetings, journal clubs, MRI discussions, and so on. So enhancing the knowledge and the practice of this particular area of HIE neonatal encephalopathy. Now, audit of structure and process of the PREVENT study, I mentioned about the New Delhi team, and just I want to impress upon you that they have identified 55 indicators, and some looking at what is available as a structure, but some which is looking at processes, which will give us some idea whether we are doing the things correctly, whether we have to improve or enhance a companion at birth or recording of parograms or use of oxytocin pumps and so on. So it's quite an important internal quality assurance, quality check audit. Now, in future, we are going to make sure that the trial implementation team will do their best to coordinate everything, because we had to formally establish the data monitoring committee, which becomes more important once the intervention starts, which will feed into the trial steering committee. And finally, we'll have a small publication committee who will decide on any material coming out of this study, whether it can be presented as an abstract or a paper, had to be presented to the publication committee, which Sudhin will establish, so that there is no clash between. So every center might be able to produce their own results and publish on their own. But if it goes through the publication committee or the group, not only they can give assistance, statistical help, etc., but also will avoid any clash. So that is to be done, the last line. And I'll stop there, and perhaps if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
If there are any questions, you can please use the raise hand option and ask